Good morning. Hello, my name is Jennifer Jones, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Prevent Child Abuse America. I'm extremely excited to have Takkeem Morgan here with me today. I met Takkeem several years ago when we were both working on the Thriving Families, Safer Children initiative. And I think we quickly found out that we are incredibly passionate about prevention in particular. So Takkeem is the founder and executive director of Mosaic Parent Hub. He's a data-driven marketing expert who has been recruited by the national nonprofit Foster America to serve as a strategic marketing consultant for the Indiana Department of Child Services. In his role, he's using his personal experiences as a former foster youth, along with his expertise, to develop new and effective strategies for retaining and recruiting foster parents. He's got a passion for building partnerships across the private sector to address issues impacting marginalized communities. And he's really making a significant impact on the foster care and child welfare systems. Most recently, Takkeem has joined the board of directors for Foster America, and you can learn more about Takkeem's work by visiting his website at www.takkeemmorgan.com. So thank you, Takkeem, for joining us today, spending time with me. I always love our conversations, and today we get to have a conversation about some of the amazing work that you're doing, some of the challenges that we're facing in terms of technology and innovation, but just really excited to dive in. But before we jump into our discussion, just want to see if there's anything you want to start off by sharing or reflecting on before we kind of dig in.
Well, so as you said, Jennifer, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always walk away feeling a little bit more informed, a little bit more connected, a little bit more strategic. You're an awesome strategic thinker. And so, yeah, it's always a pleasure in terms of, just excitement. I'm very excited when I look out at the macro trends that are taking place in human services and child welfare in general. There's a lot of excitement because I can really see that there seems to be a mental model shift. And so, we can talk about it in detail as we go through this, but that's one of the things that's really exciting me is that I think there is change that's happening at a level that allows for significant systemic change as we go forward. So that's exciting.
I love that. And you may know, Takkeem, and we'll talk a little bit about this in our conversation, is that Prevent Child Abuse America launched our theory of change last August to a lot of buzz and excitement. And one of our key strategies, but also one of the key leverage points we believe we need to engage in is this idea around shifting mindsets and transforming the narrative. And so as you talk about sort of mental models, right, that's so important if we're actually going to create systemic, meaningful change. And so
Absolutely.
I'm excited to hear that that's a trend that you're seeing. I think it's so important. We've seen it with a lot of other movements in our history, that mindset shift is really when you sort of hit the tipping point and are able to make true, meaningful change. So we can certainly dig into that more. Takkeem, you and I both have a passion for innovation and creativity. I think that's the beauty of our sector, the ability to really think about social issues and root causes and systemic issues, and then use our strategic thinking about, how can we be innovative and creative in addressing those complex issues that families are facing today. And so we really have the opportunity to elevate this idea of innovation in the social services sector. You've been talking about it in your work. We've been talking about it in spaces like Thriving Families. So just would really love to hear from you, Takkeem, about your perspective around innovation in prevention in particular, but certainly feel free to share about innovation in other spaces as well.
Yeah, so when I think about innovation in human services and social services, I think what is compelling is the acknowledgement that the system as constructed is not designed to address the problems and the challenges that we are facing. That the system was designed to address a perceived problem that is not the one that we're actually facing. And so, because we have a scenario where a system is in place and operating and designed for a different set of problems, then we have to quickly both identify the actual problems that make sense to solve and that we really want to solve and that we can get outcomes, positive outcomes on, and the ways, the solutions for addressing those problems. We have to do those things at the same time. And I think when you have a situation like that, then that's when innovation becomes very valuable, right? Because you have to do things differently and you have to do them quickly. And you essentially have to try and fail fast in order to come up with solutions that would allow us to move forward on the challenges that we know we're actually facing, not the ones we thought we were facing. And I think if, to be more specific, I think the child welfare and much of human services, some of it was designed for exceptions, right? We thought that perhaps we have exceptional parents that aren't, loving their children and aren't, stepping up to the plate. Perhaps we have exceptional communities that, that have a problem here or there. But what we're finding is we're not dealing with exceptions. We're dealing with systemic challenges, and we need systemic solutions. And the ones that are in place don't fit the bill, and so we need to innovate. And that's what's exciting. Rapid change and new sets of problems require an innovation mindset.
I love that. And as I was talking about our theory of change earlier, our whole approach was around adaptive strategy, right? It was an adaptive strategy process, which is the idea that we need to be flexible, we need to be nimble, we need to be able to respond to the ever evolving world around us. And I think you just alluded to that with this idea around rapid feedback, rapid cycle, rapid testing, right? That these systems are complex and complicated, and we can't create something that we wait 5-10 years. We can't do like we did in the old in the past, where we create these strategies, we wait for RCTs, random control trials, and 5-10 years down the road we decide it doesn't work, or it shows that it doesn't work. We just don't have that luxury anymore, right? We need to be
Right.
innovative, we need to be creative, we need to be adaptable. I also love how you said around, systems, these systems weren't designed, right? Or they were
For the
designed, let me
challenges
say.
that we face, right?
That's
That
exactly
we
right. And
actually
so
face.
that's exactly right. And so the child welfare system in particular, right, was designed to keep kids safe, right, from physical abuse in particular, right? And we know the history around the orphan trains and all the things that led up to our current child welfare system. But they weren't designed to address, it wasn't designed to address things like poverty, right? Or prevention. And this idea now that we know, or not idea, but we know that, anywhere between 60-70% or more of the kids coming into the child welfare system are due to neglect, right? Are due to issues related to poverty. And so how do we now change, right? How do we now address the fact that poverty and racism and the things that we know are now resulting in the current child welfare system, or contributing, right, to the current child welfare system and the kids and families that are coming to the attention of that system? We now have to change, right? We have to think differently, and we have to be innovative and creative. Love that. I love how you're thinking about that, and why, and the systemic challenges that need systemic solutions, right?
That's right.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit about technology, right? And in your bio, you say you're a data-driven marketing expert. You and I have had conversations about technology, and we see that, right? We see the advances and enhancements of technology playing out in our daily lives. We saw it during the pandemic in particular, where we had to rely on technology in different
Courts.
ways, and
That's
we had
right.
to
For
use
many
it
things. Yep.
Right, and to get resources and supports and communications to families. So how else, I know you're really thinking about this, and I love that. I mean, you talk about innovation, right? You're really thinking about how can we be more innovative when it comes to technology. So tell me a little bit about how else are you seeing families use and rely upon technology today?
Yeah, so I think that at a very basic level, we realize that families are nuanced, right? There's families in general are very nuanced. Each family has a different configuration of challenges that they're facing. And so whenever we commit to actually serving those families and identifying and trying to meet those family needs, we inevitably have to bring a myriad of resources to the table for those families. And just by virtue of the world that we in, the best way to do that is usually through some type of technology, some type of, intermediary that allows for multiple resources to intersect. And if nothing else, we're looking to understand to be able to track and measure, the impact of those resources. And so it becomes easier to do that at scale when we're leveraging technology. So you say what types of technology? I think that when you look, apps are huge, right? So we have you all have the Healthy Families Initiative. One of the things I noticed as I was doing research here in the state is that there is an app that at least the service providers use to manage those engagements, right? There's an app that says how many mothers, how many young mothers are in the program, how many are being served, what their level of progress is. So, that's prime example. This is a young mother, right, trying to be prepared for her future. And we're saying, look, if you don't understand how to manage some of the challenges using technology, then you're probably not going to be very prepared for the future that we see on the horizon. And so we right from the beginning we say, look, let's leverage that technology. Find help is a very popular tool, right? Where if you just look at the approach and the name, it's very generic. It's saying, listen, you need a lot of different when you need help, you need a lot of different resources. Well, how about we aggregate those resources in a easy to navigate space that's digital, and then we can communicate with you about whether it meets your needs or not, and be able to continuously improve. um, there are professionals with lived experience all across the sector that are coming up with technical solutions to challenges that are out there. And the truth of the matter is, not every solution requires technology, not at all. The challenge that we have in child welfare, though, is that we generally are technology adverse. We usually like to, be slow to adopt technology. And here's the thing: when you're dealing, as some people have called it, surveillance, when you're trying to find, seek out, and identify bad actors, and that's basically a one to many. So it's one state, one agency that's going out and trying to do these, do this, take this view of families. So that's one way to solve a problem. But if you shift and you say, what do you need? And you allow families to opt in, well, then now you have to have the capability to serve them in a different way, right? Because the service on the surveillance side is from you going out and deciding who to serve and when. But if you actually look out there and you see what the challenges are, poverty, right, in particular, and if poverty is being conflated, with neglect, then, well, maybe you need to allow parents to opt in. Maybe you need to allow families to opt in. And when you allow them to opt in, you're going to need to be able to manage, that information flow and that engagement differently, usually probably requiring some type of technology. At least you're going to be a lot more efficient if you're able to leverage technology. And here's the other thing: I'm speaking a lot about technology, but when we talk about innovation, it's not just technology. Sometimes it's process, right? So the shift from a me to you to us model, that shift from push to pull maybe is can be an innovation. Like the way that we're going to meet needs. I know you're probably aware there was an initiative recently launched to help families, and it's all about, families saying what they need and responding to those needs. So
Which seems so simple, yet we don't do that often enough, right?
no,
Listen to what families need or want or say. So go ahead. You were going to say something,
and I was going to say that's exactly so. My career started in the private sector, right? So
right?
I completed my master's, and I went into corporate strategic marketing, and I operated on the technology side of things, using on the business technology side of things. And the interesting thing over there, just as a marketing expert, our golden rule is to go to the customer and ask, how's it going? What do you need? How's what we made working for you? What changes would you like? And we know that, we call it consumer preferences. It's the rule that consumer preferences change, and they
Right.
change often. And so
Yeah.
you always have to be in touch with the consumer to know, and I'm talking obviously in the private sector side, but to know how they're feeling and how they're changing what they need as they become more educated, as their needs get become more sophisticated. So when I made the transition into the public sector, it was surprising to me that there was not a mechanism for feedback loop, that there was not a mechanism to constantly engage with the end user and allow the end user to help you co-design, the solution ultimately, because we know that the best technologies, Google, Apple, Amazon, all these, the best ones have really close relationships with their end users, and they're constantly improving and perfecting that service or that product. And I think, we're the public sector, but when we talk about process, right, and we talk about systems, this is something that we could learn, right? Is that constant feedback, a system for constant feedback and continuous improvement, and make that, just as high a priority, right? Because the reason why they use it in the private sector is because it delivers excellence, and obviously, if you deliver excellence, you can deliver profits, right? But in the public sector, if you deliver excellence, you get outcomes, right? You
Right.
get the outcomes that you want
We want.
consistently and reliably, right? Which is
Well,
what
and
we want.
it's this idea that, how ludicrous would it be to go out to market with a brand new product like an iPhone, for example, or, Google. I actually participated in a Google research study, right, where I went into their offices and they said, "How do you feel about this?" I think it was an app actually about travel. But it's that idea that you wouldn't go out to market without actually testing it first
Yeah,
with your users, with your end users. And we don't embrace that at all, right? I mean, we're constantly in our sector developing strategies and solutions and programs and interventions without ever talking to people. And then we wonder why it doesn't work when we go out and launch it, right? And so I think that's so critical. And how do we bake that in to who we are, and into the DNA of our organization, so that it's just part of who we are and what we do, just like
that's
it
right.
is for Google or Apple or yeah, I love that. I think we need to do more of it. We need to figure out how to do it better. um
Yeah,
you brought up two things that I want to just respond to. One is that we're technology averse. And, I worked in state government. You're doing that right now with your consulting. And I always had this, I guess this perception or imagination that state government, right? Government should be leading the way in terms of technology, right? They have the resources, they have the people, the experts, right? You have all the knowledge, right? And
and the need.
the need for sure. And so I always thought that we would see, like, technology coming out of government that was far more advanced than sort of what we see in our own individual lives. But that's not the case, right? It's like you go into these governments or organizations and the technology is, 20 years old in some cases, right? And so I think how do we get better, right? About using technology in a way, how do we stay innovative? How do we stay in front of the trends, right? In terms of technology. You also mentioned apps, and I think it's interesting because you never really think about how much you rely on apps, right? During your day, during your every day. I have my travel app, I have my weather app, I have Shazam when I'm listening to music and I want to know the song, right? I do
Right.
Headspace for meditation. I know you do meditation as well, and I want to hopefully
Yeah.
get to that. But it's so how do we it has become part of our everyday life. And so how do we use it to our advantage? Or as we're designing solutions that we're incorporating some of this thinking, um, cutting edge thinking, right? In terms of technology and solutions for families. But we know there are concerns, right? There are definitely some concerns. There are some challenges about relying on technology to do our work. And so I want to ask you that. What are some of the concerns or challenges you see? How do we ethically resolve those issues, right? And we're going to get to AI here in a minute, but I think AI brings some of those ethical challenges out in the forefront. But talk to me a little bit about the concerns or challenges that you're seeing around technology in our work, and how do we kind of think about ethically resolving those?
Well, I think at the top is privacy and bias are right, way up there at the top of the concerns. Because we are in such a data rich time period and environment that you can almost use data to paint really any picture to get uh a clear view of things that maybe others don't want you to have a view of, right? Like that's a real concern, that if you have too much data in about me and around me, then now and all of a sudden I can't be safe. I can't be a private person. I have to be a public person, which means that I have to be subject to all the facts as well as the falsehoods or the perceptions, right? Now everyone can kind of paint perceptions on me, and that could cause problems. When I say me, that's me as an individual, me as a community, right? Me as a stereotype, because we still have those dynamics that are at play too. So that privacy is an issue, bias is an issue, right? Because of the historical exclusion of various people, various communities, and various groups. If they're not included in data and they're not included in technology, and technology becomes the status quo, then perhaps the status quo is the exclusion of their ideas, thoughts, cultures, needs. And so those are very much flying high when we talk about adoption, and often because government usually has challenges when it comes down to this equity question and this service question, that they're like, we don't need another thing that can cause us problems. And so that's where you see some of the opportunities with technology and innovation bumping right up against the cultural norms within the space, within the child welfare and human service government space. And so those are the things that we'll have to just be very mindful of and monitor. I know you said we're going to talk about technology a little bit. At some point, the opportunity outweighs the risk, right? The risk of, hey, is this just another thing that's going to make us more biased? Well, is there an opportunity? I know I wrote a paper a little while ago about what if you had folks who have the need for the technology involved in the design and development and continuous improvement, continuous evaluation, and you just made that a norm. So now you're giving them the power of this resource. It's almost like having a safe way to pipe the electricity into the house, right? As opposed to saying, no, you got to come, we got to ration it out. You got to come down to the government to get access to the things you need electricity for, like refrigerators and microwaves. No, they say, you know what? We'll figure out a safe way to give you access to this power. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same here. And that's, electricity obviously is dangerous, right? You put electricity in a house, people can burn down. I mean, it happens all the
Right.
time, but
Yep.
the benefits outweigh the risk. And so we
Yes.
pipe that electricity down to the house. And I think it's the same with some of the new emerging technologies, especially AI. I think it is really that powerful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that example, because I think in order for us to get ahead as we do in our world, in our society, right? We talked about innovation. You have to think about the risk, but you have to also think about the opportunity. And if we didn't think about the opportunity in some of the things that we've created, like electricity, we wouldn't have the luxury of being able to turn on the lights in our house, right? And so I think that's a really important point. I think oftentimes, at least in our sector, I'm sure other sectors as well, but I think in our sector, we tend to be more risk adverse. And we tend to, spend a little bit more time, and rightfully so in some cases, right? But how do we get at that, right? How do we think about the opportunity? I also love the point that you said about government has challenges with equity. I think that's a nice way of saying it, right? But I think that in all of the things that we talk about related to our work in child welfare and technology, it's equity is a huge part of what we need to think about, what we need to make sure we're, is at the top of our mind, right? That we're always viewing this through, in particular, our race equity lens. And so I love that you brought it up. One thing I also want to add before we go to AI, because I definitely want to go to AI next. The social media, right? We didn't have that, or at least I didn't. I'm a little older than you, Takkeem, but I didn't have that when I was, in college or a kid, right? And sometimes very grateful for that. But I have a lot of family members that have kids, and they're not, they're like no, no posting of my child on social media. They don't show the faces, all of those sorts of things. And for me, I'm like, oh well, like it would be great to see, or be able to share a picture of my, niece or nephew or whatever. But it's a real issue that I think parents today have to be concerned about with social media, and how you can actually kind of steal, a child's photo and voice and use it for bad. So I think there are some of those risks as well that parents have to be sort of concerned with, um, and think about. So would love for you to address that at any point, but let's go to AI for a minute. And I think that the other thing that I
Well,
was going to say,
I'll say a
okay,
word
go,
about
yeah,
I'll say a word about that. I think so. I think the um, danger is real, and it's been proven.
yeah,
There's been several stories that have been written on some of the awful things that could happen when people kind of play with this new technology. But I think a lot of this concern is concern that takes place at the beginning of any new technology when people are experimenting with it. I think that it's great for it to come out now and for us to, raise those concerns, because then we can, develop solutions and develop protocol and rules. Now, we know people will break rules no matter what.
right,
You can have all the best rules, in the world, but some people are still going to break them. So the fact that people are breaking the rules or doing nefarious things is not, I don't think it's enough to say, let's run away from this thing. But I think it does tell us, hey, here's the things you want to be aware of, and here's how you want to design solutions so that we prevent and don't allow for this type of behavior, or prevent it as much as possible. I think that's the thing about that. But I think once, the truth is, once you start to show some of the actual value of some of these tools, then I think you're going to see people using it for the thing that's going to get them the most value, and not, some of the, I mean, you have one or two people doing this, but most people will probably end up using it for to benefit themselves, to increase their quality of life, if you make it such. So
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think you always have the people that are going to there's always going to be people that are going to use it for, for bad, right? And not for good. But I think, again, your point about opportunity outweighs the risk, and we got to think about that and use it in that way. So I want to talk a little bit about AI. And you've been writing about this. You've been doing work around AI. Again, love your innovative spirit and thinking about how we can use this in better ways for our work. And so, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about, what your perspective is on the impact of AI, and how we can use it to better support families. And I know you've done some of this in your thinking and in your work, and so would love for you to share that with
yeah,
us.
I think the thing that thank you. I think the thing that makes AI so exciting is the way that it intersects with some of the macro trends that we see in human services and child welfare in particular. Just from a macro standpoint, I think you see a shift from, as I said, surveillance and monitoring to allowing families to opt in to services and taking more of a service posture, of a customer service posture, where we want to make access easy. We want to make prevention the rule, that we're not waiting to crisis in order to help, because we know at crisis it's most expensive usually, right? So if we're really going to do this and do this economically efficient, then we're really going to try to leverage all the tools that we can to lower the cost and really prevent, crisis from taking place. And so I think when you look at the capabilities of AI and its rapid pace of improvement and the myriad of use cases for its strengths, the applicability for its strengths, then it just kind of coincides with the change perfectly. And what I mean is that when you shift from a surveillance, or monitoring model to more of a customer service model, you inevitably have to be able to connect with, assess, and be able to reach more people at one time, right? And so the language models, one of the obvious and just sort of immediate benefits is that it's processing large amounts of information in relatively short periods of time. So just that kind of high level basic functionality means that, okay, so we could potentially understand the feedback of 5,000 families in their nuanced experience of a solution in a way that we couldn't before, right? That we can query a one model, one system on 5,000 different experiences. And if we wanted to, we could say list each one of them, and it would have the capability of listing 5,000, or we can say aggregate them, or, I think that capability just opens up a world of possibilities. And I think we're kind of definitely just scratching the surface of understanding, okay, how does that allow us to scale effective solutions, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like with any new technology, it's like understanding the breadth. Like it's kind of crazy, right? That you can, I use AI on occasion, and it brings up everything, right? It just like brings up everything you ever wanted to know. I mean, it writes papers for you, right? It's like the
Right.
capacity is endless and tremendous,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and
Um,
I mean, let me just say something about, so that writing paper thing, right? Really, the model that we see that's public, the only, and I'm probably underselling it a little bit, but the main thing that you see taking place
yeah.
is the model being able to effectively manipulate the English language down to the
Hmm.
letter, right? It understands how each letter combination occurs. I mean, it literally, so the model that we see out here is doesn't think at all. It
Right.
only guesses. It literally is like a mathematical model,
Yeah.
right? And if you think about 26 letters in the alphabet, right? There's a limited number of words. You can make up words that sound phonetically correct, but there's a limited number of words, right? What if you can make a machine that could tell you every combination of those 26 letters in those limited number of words, such that if you started a sentence, it could give you the probability of the complete sentence, the variation of complete sentences,
Yeah.
right? If you start
Crazy.
it, right?
Yeah.
And it's a calculation machine. And that's all you're
Right.
seeing right there. But that same calculation machine and that capability, you can put things like statistical information about the effectiveness of a universal basic income program and
Mhm.
query it the same way. And that's even more limited. It's a limited number of outcomes that have taken place within this UBI experiment. But now you can query that full data set in lightning speed. If you were to run your assessment through this AI, right, through this language model, so you and now there's challenges, right, because it's new, right, but you could just think about what that power could represent, like how quickly you could begin to make decisions and adjust once you know that you can rely on the calculation, the assessment, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
After you get past that hurdle, you're like, whoa, we can do amazing things here.
Yeah, and I think this is where, and I want to get to this in a second. I think this is where equity comes in, right? But let me ask you this. Do you think that there might ever be a moment in time where we would use AI for making case decisions in child welfare?
I think that when you say making case decisions, right? So what if needs never became a case? Like what if
I mean,
needs never
there's, yeah,
reached a point of a case, right? Now, right, they may need to, right? But here's the thing. My interest in AI is way upstream. And so that's why I give you that counter. I
yeah,
don't think that it's necessary for us to use the best technology we have to make case decisions. I think
right.
case decisions, I mean, when we look at them on the whole, they're just fraught with problems.
Agree.
Primary assumptions often are off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Um,
because it's a human making a decision, a judgment, right? About a
right.
particular family based on your lens in this world, of which equity
That's
is
right.
is 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 a big part of that. But I love that you're like, I don't even want to think about that. I want to think about, I only want to think about the prevention space.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
don't
it's
think
it's
it's a
it's an
good
interesting
use.
question, right? It's an interesting question. Like
Yeah,
today, in today's child welfare world, we still have a child welfare system, right? We haven't gotten rid of it. We haven't transformed it. We haven't, it's still here. And it's curious. It's curious. Like, would there ever come a time, or are there folks thinking about, well, we could actually use this technology to decide whether or not a family even comes into the child welfare system? So I think there's some
Well, what I will say is that it has
interesting
been used that
projections.
way. So the predictive, Allegheny County had a
Yeah,
famous case,
predictive analytics. Yeah.
where they used predictive analytics, which some of it is very close to the functionality, at least the kind
Yeah.
of calculation functionality of the new AI models, the new large language models. But I just think that we're not there where we want
Right.
any robot making intimate decisions for us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think we're there. Now, robots can help us get what we need. We would love that, carry more stuff for us. Like absolutely, you know what I mean? Fix things, you know what I mean? Give forewarnings about things, look around corners for us. Like that's all great. But deciding whether or not to take my liberty or take my child, I don't think that that's what we're asking for our robots to do. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think those are part of the those are part of the conversations that are being had out there, right? It's like, what are the consequences, the negative consequences of some of this technology, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
here, and I live in Madison, as you know, and on campus they have those little robots that
Mm-hmm.
are driving around campus all the time. And it's crazy when you drive down campus and there's these little things, and in those little things are food that people order, and it gets picked up at the restaurant and it drives to the dorm or and it's like this little robot, right? Those are the kind of things I think, that you're like, that's a great idea, right? It's like I can order food
Exactly.
and this little robot delivers it to my door. But those are the kind
That's
of
right.
technology things I think that, that we all appreciate. And we know, and this is what I wanted to ask you next, is that we have to be aware of some of these things, right? We have to be aware of some of the consequences. We have to be aware of the equity issues. So tell me a little bit, or talk to me a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you're seeing, barriers, concerns that you're hearing about or seeing when we think about AI.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges and biggest barriers is the data that's used to train the large language models, right? When we talk about equity, you know, we know that there was not an eye towards equity in the initial training of the models. And we've done extensive research. I work with Chapin Hall's AI working group, and we do a lot of review of current research on the use of AI. And like I said, the issue of bias and equity are way up because they've been tested. They've tested these models and they've done things like facial recognition, and they struggle to recognize minority faces, right? So they have this, amazing technology. It's like, look, we can recognize your face, we can associate things, but not if you're not if you're too dark, right? Not if you're too ethnic. It's same thing with gender, right? So when we asked the models in the past, and they've improved on this, but when you ask the models in the past, give me some characteristics of this person, and you make this person a traditionally female or woman name, then the model, gives you stereotypes and bias, right? And the same thing for ethnicity, same thing for race, and religion in some cases as well. And so, these sorts of things are the result of the training data for the models, which was likely popular data. So data that's available on the internet. And we know, there's a digital divide. There's just so many people that aren't on the internet. The internet, in many ways, is still a luxury to many. We've closed that gap in the U.S. somewhat, but there's still a lot of folks that aren't there. And let alone a lot of folks use the internet to consume, but when it comes down to contributing, their perspective, their ideas, their viewpoints, there's not an equitable amount of information about everyone, particularly cultures that are on there. And so these models have been essentially designed to be biased, or yeah, they've been designed to be biased. And so you see a lot of scrambling to correct that, which is important, and it's doable. That's the other great thing about the model. I mean, you think about last year in artificial intelligence, and language models have been around. I mean, you probably can remember websites where you speak to a chat bot, and it has a pre-selected number of answers and
Yeah.
multiple choice questions and things like that. That's an artificial intelligence, and that's a language model as well. But if you see, it's all pre-populated. The questions and answers are pre-populated. It's just kind of pulling from a
Like a menu.
spreadsheet,
Yeah.
menu of answers, where the new model is much more sophisticated. It's in real time, having an interaction.
Yeah.
You, you know,
Yeah.
um, it's just a lot more powerful, and it's moving a lot faster. Models, though, require a lot of energy. That's the other concern, right? Is that because of the amount of information that it's processing, they require a lot of energy. And so as you proliferate the use of these tools, you're going to actually increase computing power dramatically, the use of computing power. And that's kind of like the area that a lot of folks don't talk about a lot, but everyone that is developing is well aware that we need to increase our ability to be able to efficiently, use and leverage computing power. And when I say efficiently, without destroying the globe, without burning too much energy and
Right, right.
overheating, because they
Our
really do
next, yeah, our
require.
next conversation can be about climate change and the environment because there's so much
That's
there
right.
as well. Right, right.
Yeah, but
Um,
that is a real concern with the computing power with AI servers and managing that. So they're trying to
yeah,
develop chips
and
that
something
are
that you
more
don't,
efficient.
yeah, something that you don't really think about, but it's again the concerns and the consequences and the things that we have to at least weigh out. Again, this idea around opportunities outweighing the risks, like what are the risks? What do we understand them to be? And then how do we address those?
Hmm.
I want to shift just slightly, and we have talked about this a little bit. So you have shared your story around being a youth aging out of care, a former foster youth, and you've talked about the importance and the impacts of centering families in decision making. You've talked about co-design. You've talked about, making sure we're talking to the end user, right? So how do we, I think this is a conversation we have a lot in our work. How do we do that in a meaningful way? So it's not just gathering feedback, but it's actually co-design, it's actually sharing power. And then how can an organization like PCA America be a national leader in this space around centering families?
Yeah, and I think the way that you center families is that you make them a central part of the system of the change mechanism. Um, I'm really excited about this new organization that myself and about 50 other professionals are launching called LEAD. And it's a professional network for people working in human services that have firsthand experience with the systems that they're trying to impact. And the whole idea is that there's an intrinsic motivation with individuals who have navigated these systems. If they've committed themselves to improving those systems, there's an intrinsic motivation, and that intrinsic motivation is of significant value to systems change and to future systems, because it's the sort of thing that's what every good employer wants. They want an employee that's motivated internally, that's not motivated by the incentives that they're given, but they're motivated by the opportunity to make a difference in the world. And I think that when we look at some of the mega trends, some of the paradigm shifts within the child welfare space and the rapid change, I think it would be important to incorporate some of those professionals that have firsthand experience, that have a commitment and intrinsic motivation in that change process, and they're going to bring their families and their communities into the fold, if by no other reason, by the fact that they're connected to them, that's what they know, and that's part of the experience they bring to the table, is the experience with their community and with their families. I think that's one way to do it. I think the other way to do it is to center solutions in the place where the challenges are, right? Camden and New Jersey have done this very well when they rolled out that early systems of care. I know they have some challenges as of late, but when they initially rolled out that systems of care, they were getting a lot of responsiveness from communities because they placed access points in communities, and they allowed the community to essentially own the experience, the customer experience of those places, meaning that they didn't have to look like government buildings. They could look like community centers and community places where people can feel comfortable. And then they had services co-located in those places, right? And I think that's another way to do that, is to just be committed to partnering, right? In a way where you're actually sharing the value. And by sharing the value, some of that value of the solution has to get left in the community with those individuals, right? Because then that's their sustenance as well. That's how they sustain their part of the partnership is that some of that value has to be left in that community. And so I think that those are two great ways to do it, is to just bring on and support professionals with lived experience. So, PCAA could certainly support and partner with an organization like LEAD, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
developing and training professionals. For instance, one of the things that LEAD wants to do is be able to do workforce readiness, right? So
Yeah.
if you all have requirements and you have, workforce needs, working with LEAD to understand what those needs are, and then to develop some type of mechanisms for being able to make people more likely to be prepared for those opportunities. Not that it's a guarantee, but they're more likely, right?
Right.
Here's
Right.
what PCA is about. Here's how a person with lived experience might intersect with PCAA, right? Just that sort of education that would make it a lot easier for someone to go from, say, working at another nonprofit to working with them for PCAA.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm congrats on LEAD. I'm excited to follow that, and certainly very excited to see how we can partner with you all with LEAD as we think about centering families in our decision making, and again making it part of our DNA, our organizational DNA. Takkeem, one more question I want to ask, if you don't mind, before we wrap up. So I saw on again to social media, I saw we're friends on Facebook. I saw that you're starting to do art again, and you told the story. You told a story about that on social media about your art, and I found it to I found it to be very profound and touching. And you said in this story you had realized it was the first time you didn't have a home. And so, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that, and then would love to hear what your favorite art medium is, and when we'll be able to buy your artwork in the mainstream stores.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a great question. So yeah, so it's true. So I aged out of care when I was 18 years old, as I was entering college. I didn't know that there was the possibility that I was basically entitled to support while I was in college. I didn't realize that the aging out was an option, and it was really kind of miscommunicated to me. I thought that that was what had to happen because I was going to college. I was no longer in care, so I didn't get the option of getting that added support once I was in school. And what that meant is that my dorm was my home, right? Because I was no longer in a foster home. I was aged out. They were no longer receiving any type of benefits from me. I no longer had a place to live at my former foster home, which is where that's where I went to college from, you know. And so I had a portfolio of work that I had done since the time I initially went into care, actually. So it was the portfolio of the time period that I was in care. I started it at my first kinship placement with my art teacher, Marcy Morris, and I had built up this portfolio through all the way through the end of high school, and it was very precious to me. It basically was the development of me as an artist, because it's this my start early stuff, and then some of my bigger, more detailed, more intricate pieces. And when I stashed it, I tried to stash it, right, because I really didn't have a place at this home. It was somebody else's home, and they had a family and all that. And so I tried to stash it, and I was self-conscious about it. So I didn't say to someone, "Hey, I'm going to put this up," because I kind of knew that it wasn't that type of situation, right? They likely were not going to be able to hold and preserve my artwork. And who knows, maybe they could have, maybe if I wasn't so subconscious, they might have. Nonetheless, as I tried to hide it, and then I come back and it was just gone. And it's like my worst nightmare. I was just like, oh no, it's gone. And when I realized that it was gone, it was a confirmation. I guess I kind of already knew that this is not your house. That's why you need to hide it somewhere. But yeah, when I came back and it wasn't there, and then I asked around, and no one, it was not even a thought. You know what I mean? They didn't know where it was. They had no recollection of moving it. And we were had a great relationship. It wasn't like I was like treated like a stepchild or anything. It just was kind of a fact, you know. And so yeah, I did. I realized I was like, man, you don't have a home, you know, and I had to just kind of come to grips with that, you know. And I decided I wasn't going to do art because art, you know, for a person that doesn't have a home, art is just too much, you know, it's too much to manage, you know, because you carry it around, it's gonna get all crumbled up. And so I gave it up. Yeah, I remember really making a decision around that because I was like, all right, I'm not going to do any more art, you know. And one of the things I did say though is I was like, I'm going to do my art in a different way. I'm going to live it out. You know, that's one thing I did say to myself is like, I'm just going to be creative in the way that I live and the way that I go about life. And I think I've kind of maintained that. I do get a little serious sometimes, but I think I kind of maintained that a little bit. But yeah, I came back to it recently, and it's interesting because I went and seen a Salvador Dali
Yeah.
show. It's an immersive experience. And as I was looking through Dali's work, immediately, soon as the show started, I had a rush of energy that put me back into my art world. And actually, the way that he went about his pieces and his design was I related to it in many ways because he wasn't trying to be real in a sense. He was trying to express how he was feeling and his emotions.
Right.
And I realized that that's, you know, the type of artist I was as well, that I wasn't drawing for perfection. I was drawing for expression and I was painting for expression. And so, and creatively, you know, being when you painting to express is there's a real strong creative component, you know, it doesn't have to be grounded in reality, which is liberating from an art standpoint. But when I realized about this pain, that brought me back to the artwork. And so I immediately conceived of 2, 3 pieces that were all focused on pain. And so that's the series that I'm 2 pieces into right now. And is this series that's focused on pain. And although it's focused on pain, it's not a sad series, you know, because what I realize is a lot of my life has been shaped by pain. But, you know, I think that by embracing pain and understanding the roots of pain, you inevitably, or you have the potential to unlock a path to joy, right? Because you understand what it is that bring you pain, and you understand why. You understand, you know, what it is about your humanity that makes this painful. And then, you know, you can chart a path towards joy. At least that's what I do. That's what I've done. I realized that though. Once I acknowledged that pain, I realized, oh, okay, this is why you play golf and why you have so much fun with your son and, you know, encourage imagination and still play with action figures, you know, and things like that. Because the seriousness of life, the problems and the challenges have caused pain. And some of those need to get dealt with, and we'll deal with them, but we'll preserve space for joy so as not to be consumed by pain. So
I love that. I love that, Takkeem. I love that. Well, first off, I love that you found your way back to art, and I so look forward to watching that when you're ready to share that. I think just the profoundness of that story, people that haven't been in the system or been touched by the system just have no understanding, right? Of like uh that's something that was really, profound for you in the moment. And that's not something that, people who haven't been part of the system don't think about. Like, I can keep my stuff at my folks' house, and I did when I was in college, and I didn't have to worry about that. And that's something that you just don't think about. And so I really appreciated you sharing that with us and sharing that. I love that you're back doing your artwork. And if you ever get a chance, go to the Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. It's pretty powerful in St. Petersburg, Florida. So if you're a Dali fan, you'll love that.
check it out.
Yeah, so go check it out. So Takkeem, I just want to say again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for dedicating your life to working to ensure children and families have what they need to thrive. We need you, we need LEAD, we need all of the folks that you talked about who have that intrinsic motivation to keep us real and to also keep this movement alive. I appreciate you, I appreciate our partnership, and I look forward to all of the work that we get to do together as we both move along in our space and in this work. I also just want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of our partners in prevention. We believe at PCA America that prevention is possible and that everyone has a role to play in prevention. Encourage you to visit preventchildabuse.org to learn more about our theory of change, access any additional resources, or to make a donation to support children and families through Prevent Child Abuse America, because we know that together we can prevent child abuse, because childhood lasts a lifetime. So thank you again, Takkeem. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and have a great rest of your day.
You're very welcome, Jennifer. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this exclusive episode. The 2024 Cat Month series can be streamed on our Cat Month page, preventchildabuse.org/catmonth2024, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can find more information at preventchildabuse.org and on our social media channels. Remember, prevention is possible, and together we can prevent child abuse, America, because childhood lasts a lifetime.